Hey, this is Pragya Shah, and today I am back with another book review. So, this is the book review on Passchier and Traw's Micro-tectonics. So, Micro-tectonics, or you have, I have reviewed about the J.P. Bard's book, or the microtextures and the structures, all the Vernon's book. Now, microtectonics or microtextures and microstructures, this is the, this is the intersection point of the subjects of structural geology and petrology. So microtectonics also lies in that. It deals with the, all the tectonics at the microscopic scale. So this is a specialized field, but it's a lovely field, an extension of structural geology. A framework of microtectonics is the introduction, establishing and interpreting deformation phases and metamorphic events, flow and deformation, introduction, terminology, description and reconstruction of deformation, reference frames, homogeneous and inhomogeneous flow and deformation. Introduction, numerical description of homogeneous flow and deformation and strain, progressive and finite deformation, flow and deformation in three dimensions, fabric attractor, application to application to rocks. Stress and deformation rheology, deformation mechanisms introduction, brittle fracturing cataclasis, dissolution precipitation, intracrystalline deformation, twinning and kinking, recovery recrystallization, grain boundary mobility, bulging BLG recrystallization, subgrain rotation SGR recrystallization, high temperature grain boundary migration GBM recrystallization, solid state diffusion creep, granular flow and superplasticity, competing processes during deformation, grain boundary area reduction GBAR, static recrystallization, deformation of some rock forming minerals, introduction, quartz, calcite and dolomite, feldspars, micas, olivine, orthopyroxene, clinopyroxene, garnet, amphiboles, deformation of polymineralic rock. Introduction, quartz, feldspar aggregates, deformed rhyolites, and exception, flow laws and deformation mechanism maps, foliations and lineations and lattice preferred orientation. Introduction, foliations, primary foliation, diagenetic foliation, secondary foliations, morphology of foliation, continuous foliation, spaced foliation, mechanism of foliation development, practical use of foliation, lineations, terminology of lineations, development of lineations, lattice preferred orientation LPO, introduction, origin of lattice preferred orientation, presentation of LPO data, LPO patterns of quartz, LPO patterns of other minerals, shear zones. We have introduction, brittle fault rocks, introduction, incohesive fault rocks, deformation bands, cohesive fault rocks, pseudotachylite, mylonite, introduction, characteristic fabric elements, mylonite classification, dynamics of mylonite development at different metamorphic conditions. So mylonites, you see in shear zones and mylonites is a very important topic. You have to read it from here. And also foliation, lineation and lattice preferred orientation, these topics are very good, very written very well here. Complex fault rocks, sense of shear, introduction, displacement and deflection of markers, foliation curvature, microscopic shear sense indicators in mylonite. Now this is the entire list that we were taught in IIT Bombay by Shomojit sir practical class. You have to read it from here. Okay, introduction, foliation orientation, shear band cleavage, porphyroclast systems and mylonites, introduction, mantled porphyroclast, mineral fish, the development of porphyroclast systems as shear sense indicators, quarter structures, lattice preferred orientation, vergence of asymmetric fold sections, Potential shear sense markers. Now, shear sense indicators in the brittle regime. Introduction. Incohesive brittle fault rocks, cohesive brittle fault rocks, pseudotachylite, dilatation sites, veins, strange shadows, fringes, and budines. Introduction. Veins. Crystals in veins. The internal structure of veins, curved fibers, and fiber growth direction. Veins in non coaxial progressive deformation. Shear veins, slicken fibers, and bedding veins. Fringe structures. Introduction. Fringes on spherical core objects, fringes on angular core objects, fringes and the deformation path, non-fibrous strain shadow and strain caps, microbudinage, porphyroblasts and reaction rim. Again, very important chapter, porphyroblast and reaction rims. Introduction. Porphyroblast nucleation and growth. Inclusions. In classification of porphyroblast matrix relations. Introduction. Pre-tectonic porphyroblast growth, intertectonic porphyroblast growth, syntectonic porphyroblast growth, post-tectonic porphyroblast growth, complex porphyroblast growth, millipede, deflection fold and oppositely concave microfold, OCM, microstructures, problematic porphyroblast microstructures, inclusion free porphyroblast, shape and size of inclusions compared to matrix grains, false inclusion patterns, mimetic growth, deformed porphyroblasts, uncertain age relation of host and inclusions, discontinuous silicon and selenium, rotation of porphyroblasts, amalgamated porphyroblasts, crystallographically determined inclusion patterns, reaction rims. Introduction. Coronas and modes, symplectides, establishing the nature of reactions, pseudomorphs, relation with deformation, primary structures. Introduction. Primary structures in rocks of igneous origin or in magmatites, magmatic or submagmatic flow, evidence for magmatic flow, evidence for submagmatic flow, evidence for solid state deformation, primary structures in sedimentary rocks, natural micro gauges. Introduction. Strain gauges, vorticity gauges. Introduction. Deformed set of veins, lattice preferred orientations, mantled porphyroclasts, fibrous veins and fringes, porphyroclast, tension gashes and foliations in shear zones. This is very important. Tension gash, oblique foliations, aluminium chromium zoning and spinel. WK, I don't know what this is. History and accuracy, concept of paleostress gauges, gauges for the orientation of paleostress principal axis, twins in calcite and other minerals, fractures and fluid inclusion planes, deformation lamellae, flame perthite, differential stress gauge, paleopiezometers, vein and fracture types, dynamically recrystallized grain size, twins in calcite and dolomite, twins in pyroxene, microbudines, deformation lamellae, pressure gauges, strain rate gauges, temperature gauges, rheology gauges. Introduction. Folding and budinage, fish and mantled objects, special techniques. Introduction. Techniques to study deformation rock fabrics, cathodoluminescence, Raman spectroscopy, electron microscopy. Introduction. Scanning electron microscopy, SEM, transmission electron microscopy, TEM, tomography, methods to measure lattice preferred orientation. Introduction. Understage measurements, U stage measurements, U stage sample selection, optical semi-automatic methods, texture goniometers, SEM techniques, chemical and isotope analysis, electron microprobe, proton microprobe, ERDA and R2F heavy ion microprobes, mass spectrometry. Introduction. SIMS, TIMS, shrimp, ICP-MS and LAICP-MS, in situ age determination, fluid inclusion studies. Introduction. Non-destructive techniques to study fluid inclusions, image analysis. Introduction. SARFOR and PAROR, experimental modeling techniques. Introduction. Experimental deformation of analog materials, large scale analog modeling, micro analog modeling. Introduction. Linear rig, torsion rig, triaxial rig, marker particles, examples of analog experiments, numerical modeling, introduction, finite element and finite difference modeling, full microstructural modeling from sample to section, introduction, sampling, orientation of hand specimen, where to sample in outcrop, cutting samples, types of thin section, geometries in thin section, a problem of dimension, choosing the orientation of thin section. So this is the book that is mostly for the MScs and PhDs, but this is a very good book for the intro, for a lot of interviews and for structural geology. So if you are doing structural geology dissertation, you have to be reading Passchier and Trouw. So this is a good book. Hope you like this video. See you in next. Until then, tata.